The Land of Yakshas is a classical Chinese short story written by the renowned Tang Dynasty novelist Pu Songling. It is part of his work Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio. During the Tang Dynasty, emissaries from the Land of Flowing Spirits informed the Tang people of the existence of the Land of Yakshas to the north. The people there ate animals with fangs and then grew fangs themselves, hence the name Land of Yakshas. In Jiaozhou, there was a man named Zhu who sailed across the sea for business. He was caught in a storm that blew his ship to an unknown place. When the wind finally subsided, Zhu found himself in a place surrounded by mountains and dense forests. Hoping for signs of habitation, he secured his ship and ventured ashore carrying provisions. As he entered the mountains, he noticed numerous cave entrances on the cliffs on both sides, resembling beehives. Faint sounds of human voices emanated from within. Approaching one of the caves, he cautiously peered in and saw two yakshas. These creatures had sharp, saber-like fangs, eyes like lanterns, and were tearing apart the flesh of a deer with their claws. Zhu was terrified and attempted to retreat, but the yakshas had already spotted him. They dropped the deer and extended their claws, seizing him and pulling him into the cave. The yakshas conversed in a bird-like language, arguing and struggling over tearing off Zhu's clothes, seemingly intending to eat him. Fearing for his life, Zhu offered them his dried provisions and beef jerky. The yakshas devoured the offerings and then rummaged through Zhu's bag. When they found nothing else, they grew furious and seized him again. Zhu pleaded, "Release me, I have a pot on my ship. I can cook more food for you." The yakshas, not comprehending his words, continued to rage. Zhu gestured once more, and this time, they followed him to the ship. He fetched a pot, kindled a fire, and cooked the remaining raw deer meat, which pleased the yakshas greatly. As night fell, the yakshas sealed the entrance of the cave with a stone, as if to prevent Zhu from escaping. He huddled in a corner, far away from the yakshas, spending a fearful night, dreading his impending fate. Come dawn, the yakshas departed and sealed the cave entrance once again. Shortly after, they returned with a dead deer, which they presented to Zhu. He skinned the deer and fetched water to cook it in the cave's depths. In a while, more yakshas arrived, and they all shared the cooked meat. Over the following days, Zhu became familiar with the yakshas, learning to communicate through their gestures and even imitating their speech. The yakshas gradually treated him like one of their own. They no longer sealed the cave entrance when they left, and Zhu would often mimic their speech, which delighted them. One day, the yakshas rose early, wearing strings of bright pearls around their necks, and awaited a distinguished guest. Zhu cooked more meat for them and inquired about the occasion. The yakshas replied, "Today is the festival of longevity." They also mentioned that Zhu had no fangs. The yakshas took off 5 pearls each, making a string of 50, and adorned Zhu with it, signifying his honorary status among them. Later, the yakshas instructed Zhu to accompany them to a large cave. Inside, a stone platform with several seats encircled a large boulder, resembling a table. A yaksha, much larger than the others, occupied the top seat. When the yakshas gathered, a storm arose, and the giant yaksha entered the cave, taking his seat. The smaller yakshas assembled, and Zhu witnessed their formal greetings. The giant yaksha inquired about the inhabitants of Mount Wumi, and the smaller ones confirmed Zhu's presence. He was then questioned about his origins, and his companion yaksha introduced him as her husband. Pleased by Zhu's culinary skills, the giant yaksha ordered cooked meat to be supplied regularly. The giant yaksha noted Zhu's short fangs and offered him 10 large pearls from his own necklace. The pearls, each as big as a marble, held considerable value. Zhu's companion yaksha accepted them and adorned him with the pearls. Zhu expressed his gratitude with yaksha gestures and speech. Eventually, the giant yaksha departed, and the yakshas followed suit. 4 more years passed, and unexpectedly, the mother yaksha gave birth. She delivered 2 boys and 1 girl in a single birth, all of them resembling humans and not their mother. The Yakshas were delighted with the three children and often played with them. One day, while the other Yakshas were out hunting for food, Zhu was alone in the cave. Suddenly, another female Yaksha from a different cave arrived, attempting to establish a private connection with him. Zhu refused, and in anger, the female Yaksha pounced on him and knocked him down. Just then, Zhu's wife entered the cave and witnessed the scene. Furious, she rushed forward and engaged in a fight, ultimately biting off the other Yaksha's ear. Later, the male Yaksha, the female Yaksha's husband, arrived, and only after Zhu's wife let go of her did she depart. From that moment on, Zhu's wife remained by his side, never leaving him even for a moment. 3 years later, the children were able to walk. Zhu taught them human language, and gradually, they began to speak, becoming more lively and spirited. Although they were still children, they climbed mountains as if they were walking on flat ground. They had a strong attachment to Zhu, showing genuine father-child affection. One day, while the mother Yaksha was out with one son and the daughter, the north wind blew fiercely. Zhu felt a pang of homesickness and decided to return to his homeland. Taking one of the sons with him, he reached the coast and found his old ship still intact. He discussed returning home with his son, who wanted to inform the mother, but Zhu discouraged him. Father and son boarded the ship and set sail with the wind at their back. After just a day and night, they arrived in Jiaozu. Upon reaching home, Zhu learned that his wife had remarried and left. He sold 2 pearls for a considerable sum, becoming wealthy. He named his son Zhu Biao, who grew up to be strong and courageous, able to lift heavy objects and showing a bold and combative nature. The military commander of Jiaozu was astonished by Zhu Biao's abilities and promoted him to the rank of a general. This coincided with a rebellion on the frontier. Zhu Biao performed exceptionally well in battles, accumulating numerous achievements. By the age of 18, he was promoted to the rank of deputy general. During this time, a merchant crossed the sea by ship and encountered a storm, leading him to be cast ashore on Mount Wumi. A young man approached him, recognizing that he was from the Central Plains, and inquired about his homeland. The merchant shared his story, and the young man led him into a cave concealed among thorns, advising him not to leave. After a while, the young man brought deer meat for the merchant and revealed that he was from Jiaozu as well. The merchant asked for his name and learned he was a Zhu. The merchant informed him that his father had become a deputy general. Unfamiliar with the term deputy general, the young man asked for an explanation, to which the merchant responded that it was a title of nobility in China. Curious, the young man inquired about the concept of nobility, which the merchant described as being honored, living in grand houses, and having people obey your commands. The young man felt elated by the description. The merchant further questioned why he had stayed in the foreign land for so long. The young man recounted his past, revealing his dilemma of not fitting in and fearing harm from his own kind if he returned. Before leaving the cave, the young man asked the merchant to deliver a message to his father and brother. The merchant remained hidden in the cave for nearly half a year. He would peek out through the thorns at times, observing the Yakshas coming and going, too frightened to move. One day, a strong north wind began to blow, causing the young man to appear. He hurriedly led the merchant away, reminding him of their agreement. The merchant agreed, and with the young man's guidance, he finally managed to escape. Upon reaching Jiaozu, the merchant immediately went to the deputy general's residence and recounted his experiences to Zhu Biao in detail. Zhu Biao was both saddened and overjoyed by the news and decided to search for his mother, brother, and sister. Although his father discouraged him, Zhu Biao insisted on going. Despite the dangers of the journey to the Land of Yakshas and the treacherous sea, Zhu Biao informed the commander of Jiaozu of his intentions and selected 2 strong soldiers to accompany him on the journey by ship. They faced adverse winds on the sea, making their voyage extremely challenging. After enduring rough seas for half a month, they found themselves lost in an endless expanse of water, unable to discern their direction. Suddenly, A violent storm struck, capsizing their ship. Zhu Biao was thrown into the water, and after drifting with the waves for a long time, he was pulled ashore by a monstrous creature. This creature brought him to a place where there were houses. When Zhu Biao awoke, he found himself beside a creature resembling a Yaksha, who questioned him in Yaksha language. The Yaksha was surprised by Zhu Biao's appearance and inquired about his destination. Zhu Biao explained where he intended to go. The Yaksha was pleased and apologized for his earlier behavior, explaining that they were 8,000 miles away from Mount Wumi, and that the path ahead led to the land of poisonous dragons, not Mount Wumi. The Yaksha then arranged for a boat to take Zhu Biao to Mount Wumi. The Yaksha propelled the boat through the water with remarkable speed, covering over 1,000 miles in an instant. After a night's journey, they arrived at the northern shore of Mount Wumi. There, Zhu Biao spotted a young man gazing out at the vast sea. Realizing that there were no other humans in these deep mountains, Zhu Biao suspected that this young man was his brother. Upon closer inspection, his suspicion was confirmed as the two brothers embraced and wept. Zhu Biao inquired about their mother and sister, and the young man assured him they were safe and well. Zhu Biao suggested that they search for their mother and sister together, but his brother dissuaded him and hurried away alone. Zhu Biao turned to thank the Yaksha who had brought him, only to discover that it had disappeared. Shortly after, their mother and sister arrived, and upon seeing Zhu Biao, they all cried tears of joy. Zhu Biao shared his intention to bring them back with him, but his mother expressed concern that they might face mistreatment. Zhu Biao assured her that he was of high status in China and that no one would dare to harm them. Determined, the mother and her two sons made up their minds to return. However, the adverse winds made it difficult to sail. Just as they were hesitating, the ship's sails suddenly billowed, caught by a north wind. Zhu Biao exclaimed, "Heaven is aiding me." The four of them boarded the ship one by one. With the strong north wind, they reached Jiaozu's shore in just 3 days. Upon landing, the people who saw them thought they were monsters and scattered in fear. Zhu Biao removed his clothes and shared them with his mother and brother. Back home, the mother Yaksha saw Zhu and berated him, blaming him for not consulting her before coming back. Zhu Biao hurriedly apologized. The people of the household came to pay their respects to the mistress, trembling in fear. Zhu Biao encouraged his mother to learn Chinese and introduced her to finer clothes and delicious food, which finally brought happiness to her. Both the mother Yaksha and her daughter enjoyed wearing men's clothing, resembling the attire of the Manchu people. After a few months, they gradually began to speak Chinese. The skin of the younger brother and sister also started becoming fairer. The younger brother was named Zhu Bao, and the sister was named Yair. Both of them were brave and strong. Zhu Biao felt ashamed that he couldn't read or write, so he encouraged his younger brother to study. Zhu Bao was very intelligent. He could understand historical and literary texts at a glance. However, he didn't want to be just a scholar who knew how to read. Zhu Biao continued to have him practice shooting with a strong bow and riding spirited horses. As a result, Zhu Bao passed the military examination and married the daughter of a local official named Ayu. Due to Yair's exotic heritage, no one dared to propose marriage to her. Conveniently, one of Zhu Biao's subordinates, a man named Yuan, lost his wife. So, Zhu Biao arranged for his sister to marry Yuan. Yair was killed with a bow and arrow. She could shoot down small birds from over 100 paces away, hitting the mark every time. Whenever Yuan went to battle, he took his wife with him. Eventually, he rose to the rank of a general, and half of his achievements were attributed to his wife's prowess. By the time Zhu Bao was 34, he became a provincial commander. His mother had accompanied him on his southern campaigns, often wearing armor and wielding a blade to support her son in battles against strong adversaries. Anyone who faced her in combat was inevitably defeated. Later, the emperor intended to bestow upon her the title of Baron. But Zhu Bao urgently petitioned to decline the honor, explaining her true identity as his mother. In response, the emperor changed her title to lady. The historian Yasha remarked, "For a Yaksha to become a lady is quite extraordinary." However, upon closer inspection, it's not that unusual. In reality, every household has its own Yaksha.